COVID treatment based on your race. So this is something that has been bubbling up for a while. I remember, and I cannot find it for the life of me, we ended up doing a podcast a while back where someone got a text message saying that the vaccine rollout might be done on the basis of race from
it was like a
GP.
tip, wasn't it, from last year?
Yeah, so whoever sent that in, if you can send it in again, because I couldn't find it. But that is not where we're starting off. We're starting off first with some of the segregation with regards to people who are vaccinated and who are not.
Okay.
So this is Public Health Scotland COVID-19 statistical report, and in here they list, for example, focusing on pregnant women first, 25% of women delivering in August 2021 had received any COVID-19 vaccination prior to delivery, with 15% of women having received 2 doses of vaccination. So keep this number in your mind. About 15% of Scottish women who are pregnant going into hospital are vaccinated. So that means, what is that?
Fully vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated. And that means that 85% have got no vaccine, 85% being unvaccinated. So let's go to the next one. And this is a story I got from someone who sent it me on Twitter who told me about it, which is that the COVID booster jabs, we desperately need to have people going getting their stuff, except this only came out in October that pregnant women apparently should go and get booster jabs. As you can see in this article, at the time, they were saying women aged 40 and over who are pregnant. And of course, well, it's not most pregnant women. And then that amount was lowered. So it's not a surprise. It's not just vaccine hesitancy from pregnant women. It's the fact that they were also advised not to until very recently. So let's go to the next link, which is from Scottish Government. Update about COVID-19. 98% of pregnant women in the ICUs with COVID-19 are unvaccinated. We also know that all women who have died during pregnancy or up to 6 weeks of birth, 88% of them were unvaccinated. 88 compared to 85 were unvaccinated. So pretty much in proportion there. With the ICU one over proportion, that's true. In light of the above, the speed at which Omicron variant is spreading through communities and the safety of pregnant women and their babies taken into account, it has been nationally agreed that fertility treatment for the unvaccinated women will be deferred with immediate effect.
What?
Based on that statistic. Remember, the statistic here being that 98% of pregnant women in the ICU are unvaccinated. Okay, a little bit of overrepresentation, but not much. 88% of those who die are unvaccinated. 85% of the population of pregnant women are unvaccinated. So in line with the proportion of people, and yet...
But my understanding
if you don't have the vaccine, no fertility treatment.
My understanding that fertility treatment is not cheap either.
No.
My understanding is it's extraordinarily expensive and people put a lot of money into making it work. So to then be told, which is an absolute slap in the face, that you can't have it until you've been vaccinated or until the government changes their mind is very arbitrary and cruel.
Because 88% of the deaths are unvaccinated pregnant women. 85% of pregnant women are unvaccinated. Put 2 and 2 together. No, we're just going to ban unvaccinated pregnant women or women engaging in fertility treatment here. Right. Doesn't really make sense, but whatever. And they continue in here. Women who are within 12 weeks of having their second COVID dose or have had their booster will continue their treatment as normal. So as long as you are complying with the
who are
updated
within
boost.
12 weeks of having their second vaccine dose.
Yeah, don't really know why that period.
So does that mean once they go over that, then they can't continue their treatment?
Presumably they would then go on to get the booster. Or
Right.
At least that's how the line of events would
Okay,
work.
so they're basically using IVF or using fertility treatment as a threat, as a stick with which to beat you into getting a booster vaccine. Is that an accurate assessment?
There is healthcare until there's not, with free healthcare. And this is an issue where there is not anymore. Apparently this also applies to private treatment, so even if you pay to go private, then also too bad, because they use NHS clinics.
That's terrible.
Yeah. Funniest part in this page here, number 3, it is our personal choice to get vaccinated. Why are you forcing us to get vaccinated? As in, like, frequently asked questions. They respond, it is still your personal choice as to whether to have the vaccine. All we are saying is that we cannot proceed with treatment without evidence of vaccination due to the risks involved.
These people are... This is really outrageous.
Yeah. I couldn't get over how this is real. And it is. And they're just like, yeah, it's still your personal choice.
This is in Scotland, right?
This is in Scotland. But apparently, as they say, it's national. So I don't know if that means national is across the
national
UK
to Scotland,
or national to Scotland. It's not particularly clear in the text, to be honest.
I believe it's a devolved competency, isn't it?
But there's another aspect of this. If we go to the next one, there's an application for
devolved incompetency in this case. But
for taking part in this, the data collection form, as they put it there. And in here, of course, they also ask you for your ethnic group along with all the other information. And they say in here you can enter the code for your ethnic group because it's coded now. Please see back of cover for guidance. And there's like a big long list of all the ethnic groups and their associated codes. Right. And if we move on, we'll go to the next one here, in which we have a quote from the government again. in which you may remember a long time ago, there was discussion about whether or not to have non-whites receive priority vaccination treatment by the UK. And apparently the UK government did actually go ahead with vaccine coverage being priority in the non-white areas. Quote from them, "Good vaccine coverage in BAME communities, BAME groups, will be the most important factor within a vaccine program in reducing inequalities for this group. Prioritization of persons with underlying health conditions will also provide for greater vaccination of BAME communities who are disproportionately affected by such health conditions." And as I mentioned before, we did have a text message from GPs saying they were going to focus on BAME.
Well, one of the
individuals
problems
first.
we have, one of the broader problems we have with the NHS is that they are more and more prioritizing health inequalities over health care. And obviously, this is the same problem that you have when you apply it to the economy. The ultimate health equality is everyone is dying of everything,
I mean,
which is no health care.
you can take the Steelman argument, of course, that they could say, well, BAME people, as they use, because they don't use Yukmakamur anymore, apparently, gave up on that one, that they have a higher chance of death because of reasons, and therefore we're going to prioritize them. And, okay, but that is illegal. The Equality Act 2010, it's not allowed. I mean, just on a legal basis here, not even going to talk about morals at all, because we're going to go throw morals out the window in a minute because of where that follows.
I think we already have so far. Look at what Scotland's doing.
But if we move on, this was done as coverage in the UK, but in the United States, apparently they went even further with this. So Vermont to give minority residents vaccine priority. This is in April 2021.
How do you like that? Your healthcare is dependent on the colour of your skin. Welcome to 2021.
This was also in Montana, apparently. Starting Thursday, Vermont explicitly gave black adults and people from other minority communities priority status for vaccinations. It follows Montana, which in January announced that Native Americans and other peoples of color, completely undefined terms.
Okay, so
again,
that's a long of words to say white people back of the queue for vaccines.
Yes, it's just no whites. And the argument being because they're at higher risk of complications from COVID-19 would be allowed to receive the first vaccine, or at least to be able to get it before any white people in the state of similar status, because I assumed it was being done by age group before. The really weird thing is they also say it will be a short-term advantage since Vermont opens COVID inoculations to all adults by April 19th. So like 2 weeks later, they apply. So you've got a 2-week separation in between. We give it to people with brown skin, and then the whiteys get it in 2 weeks from now. What was the reason for that? Why 2 weeks? Why not a month? Why not forever? Just arbitrarily
all
done.
of these things are arbitrary. And you do have to wonder in this case as well. If you were a black person who is somewhat, or a person of colour who is sceptical of the government or sceptical of the vaccine, then this is exactly the sort of thing that would make you more sceptical. Why does the government want me to have the vaccine before white people?
There are some arguments put by that by people. I prefer the term. I really don't like the term person of color if I can help it.
I despise it.
I've been using people with brown skin when I can because it makes a mockery of the whole thing. The fact that it sounds so ugly, and it's just like why are we using these terms?
Yeah, it's a ridiculous term.
This is a weird conversation. It's better than Yukmagamur, that's for sure, which the Guardian tried to do instead of BAME. I don't know if you remember that.
I do, yeah.
Anyways, moving on, let's go to the next one, in which we have the story from Russia Today. Non-whites to receive priority for limited COVID pill. This is in New York State. So we've already had the discussions about let's just have healthcare on the basis of race, and we all laughed at this and said, are they actually serious? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Then the NHS apparently just did it. And then in Vermont and Vermont and Montana, they actually went ahead with doing it as well on a open basis of just saying no whiteys. Not getting your vaccines. And now in New York State, as you see there, 31st of December, they've got a limited number of anti-COVID pills, and therefore Whitey ain't getting it because Whitey has a lower chance of dying. That's the argument. They say in here, the New York State Department of Health appeared to announce this week that non-white New Yorkers would receive priority over whites in receiving extremely limited COVID-19 therapies for people at risk. And some people might think, Russia Today, well, we can just go to their source. And if we go to the next one, it is a document from New York State's Health Department. And they say in here, for the COVID-19 oral antiviral treatments authorized, you must be under your eligibility. Ages 12 years and older, tested positive for COVID. And that's, all sensible. And then some other things that are just sensible. And then they say, or you can have a medical condition or other factors that increase the risk of severe illness. Non-white race or Hispanic/Latino ethnicity should be considered as a risk factor. as long-standing systemic health and social inequalities have contributed to the increased risk of severe illness and death.
They're literally saying if you are non-white, that's equivalent to being ill.
Yes.
Having a medical condition.
And they'll argue percentages of deaths and whatnot, obviously. And the thing on my mind as well is the way they word that, though, is not as the British worded it, in the sense of like, well, our people with brown skin are more likely to have heart disease or something like that. Instead, they went with, no, social inequalities. So we're going to prioritize medical treatment due to systemic health and social inequalities.
Oh, we do that in the UK as well. The NHS talks about health inequalities all of the time, and they mean exactly this kind of thing.
Sure, but the way they also put it, systemic health, like the health system is actually racist.
The definition of health inequalities is all about systemic factors. Oh, it's got into the NHS as well. It's not just the Americans, sadly.
But I like that they're at least explicit about it here in the United States, of saying, oh, that is what the situation is. Oh, God. Anyway, let's move on. So if we go to the next link here, there is the response from sensible people saying, how is the race or ethnicity of a patient a legitimate criteria for the allocation of scarce clinical resources, like drugs or hospital beds, by a government entity in 2021 in the USA? Yeah. And also, is it constitutional? Probably not. I would guess that the Supreme Court would find this unconstitutional.
Eventually.
It's in the same way that if someone does take it to court in the UK, they will win because the Equality Act 2010 says the government can't do that.
In Scotland, yes.
In England, it also applies.
Right, yes.
I mean, these things are all on the books. The governments of our nations just ignore them until they are sued. I mean, you may remember various organizations in the UK running schemes in which they said whites cannot apply.
Yes.
They continued doing it, and some of them have continued doing it to this day.
People continued suing and winning.
Until they get the suit. Like the police officer in Chestershire who sued the police and won. Because, well, you would discriminate against me for being a white male.
Absolutely. And V related the case, which I think is still ongoing, of we reported a while back on the NHS releasing a statement that was essentially anti-white. And as a Romanian immigrant, this chap in V's article basically sued the NHS for it, and that is ongoing.
Yeah.
So...
Well,
yes, you can take legal action against these things, and you can push back against it. And it's something that, if you're in a position to do so, you should definitely consider.
There's the funny thing here, of course. Steelman position. Well, you know, these groups have a higher chance of death, therefore we're going to focus on them with the resources. Except, of course, as I mentioned, we criminalize this sort of thing. It is not legal to do such things. But just for a second, as a thought experiment, let's run the logic as it runs for, well, these people have a higher chance of death, therefore we'll give them privileges. We will give them the special needs of this racial group that they need. Well, also, should these racial groups then have accepting special restrictions as well as these special privileges? Because remember, they are a group with a higher chance of death, therefore we must put special restrictions on them, and therefore we can save more black lives in the struggle for race war or whatever BLM are chanting about these days. And if we go to the next one, well, we have some ideas, because, of course, Canada is a crazy place. And Lauren Chen responding here to Quebec starting a new curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. to stop COVID somehow.
Yeah, they had a curfew for a long time. I remember Viva Frei reporting on it. It seemed nuts.
Yeah, and as you see Lauren saying here, 81% of the population aged 5 and over are fully vaccinated in Canada. And yet they want to institute a curfew. A curfew on this. You're not going to be allowed outside of your house. Well, why not make the same argument and be like, well, you know, we've got scarce resources. They must apply these things to help the people with brown skin in our society. But also, they're all at higher risk of dying. So we'll issue a curfew on the brown people in our society so they are not as high risk to catching COVID.
Yeah.
The line of logic does run there.
And one also has to wonder, how much more at risk do they have to be? Does it even have to be beyond to the level of statistical significance? It seems like this is just a carte blanche to create extraordinarily arbitrary, tyrannical, and unfair laws and principles for the distribution of medical care. And if that's what we're paying our taxes for, then I think the NHS and other such institutions are definitely losing their shine.
Is this the future we want to go to, where your loved one could die because they're the wrong race? Just weren't high enough on the list. I don't think so. But you could also be quite progressive about it, of course. And I thought about this idea of, you know, run the same logic and you could end up arguing for people with brown skin should be indoors between 10 and 5 a.m. because they're not allowed to go out during the night. And if we go to the next one, there's an Onion video about this a while back in the same vein.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love, which was the debate about having gay people in the army. And the gays are too precious to risk in combat, says US General in this obvious fake news piece.
Yes, a parody article.
And the US general's just like, look, they're just too precious. We cannot risk them in combat. And well, you know, our black and brown communities of color, or yukumagabers, or whatever other labels we're going to put on people, they're too precious to die of COVID. So not only are we going to prioritize the entire NHS or entire medical services, there should be a curfew, shouldn't be allowed to go to work, all the rest. You see how this logic doesn't really make sense, but instead, okay, right.
Yeah, why is it that it only works when it's the same logic only works when it's privileges and not restrictions? It points to something underlying in that debate there, doesn't it?
Do the reverse as well. Let's make a new virus where it specifically targets white people and they're dying at disproportionate rates. Okay, we will prioritize all medical treatment only for white people in the hospitals. What's going to be the response?
I don't think it'll be very pleasant.
I think systemic racism might be a term that people start throwing around, which they should be already, but okay.
Yeah.
In other racial news, because I thought I'd tie this up with something else I saw that is amazing, which is here, a school in, I think we believe this is Minnesota, decided to vote for its non-white teachers to get a pay rise. Only the non-white teachers. Not the white teachers, they don't deserve one. But you get paid according to what exactly? Presumably what you can produce, but no, instead your skin tone. They're saying here, the board voted to amend district policy so that non-white teachers only may receive additional stipends to become mentors to other non-white colleagues. The new policy will also have the district placing American Indian educators at sites with other American Indian educators and educators of color at sites with other educators of color.
Blatant segregation.
I hope I think about that for a minute. So this is a mentor scheme. So teacher can help other teacher become better teacher. Makes sense. Instead, no, we throw in racial politics. And now we have it so the only kind of mentors you can have are of the same race. Because presumably they thought about this before and they ended up with white mentors of teachers with brown skin. And therefore this looks bad and is racist. So they've now blocked the white teachers from offering mentorships. And instead, they've segregated off the teachers to only train each other. Never the races shall mix.
School boards are mad in America.
And the only people who can get paid for this are people of the same race. There's a quote from some people at this meeting who were speaking. When you're one minority of a white majority, it can be very isolating and lonely. I don't know why. I don't know why you're so lonely about that sort of thing, but okay. To have a support system in place for them is not to segregate them, even though that's what you're doing. It is absolutely to support them, said Erin Roberts. This is one of the guys at the meeting who voted on this. It's like, I'm not doing segregation, it's support.
I can absolutely see people in the Jim Crow South saying, segregation is good because it's supporting people by having them among their own race. It's exactly the same kind of argument.
Also, have you ever looked at the demographics of a school in London? What Tower Hamlets? You ever looked at the demographics of that?
I have not, no.
We did on the show. And 9% of Tower Hamlet schools are white British. It's like, what was it, 90%? I think was Indian, something like that, John.
Wow.
Do you remember? So the same argument applies, that these students need support and therefore should be moved to white-only schools, or white-only schools should be set up around in Tower Hamlets for them to attend so they can get the support they need, as Aaron says. Do you listen to yourself? He continues, it is not about trying to throw the few BIPOC individuals, again, another term I can't freaking stand. What's with all the alphabets? So that's, what is it?
Black or indigenous people of color? Is that it?
Just pick a term. Just pick one, at least.
That's all of the terms, basically.
Yeah. It's not about trying to throw a few browns individuals into one building. It's about showing them that they aren't alone. As if they've never seen another person with the same skin tone and then don't think they exist. In the era
of the internet, they think, there are no other Americans with the same ethnic background as me.
There are other black people? What are you talking about?
The thing is, right, there is an extent to which you can argue, it could be lonely if you are one person in a minority of a different culture.
If you're Token from South Park.
Well, right, okay. I mean, I remember when I was in Japan and most of the stuff you're doing are surrounded by Japanese people. And yes, there are elements of that experience which are isolating and lonely. But that's because there's an enormous cultural and linguistic barrier there, not because of a racial barrier necessarily. And here, like, the whole point of America is that all of these people are Americans. And so they share this culture through which they can interact with each other. And to the best of my knowledge, that does happen. And Americans do have friends of other races. It's not... anyway.
Don't you know black people should be a separate cultural group within the United States?
Well, according to the writer of this article, anyway.
We shouldn't have a melting pot where people interact. No, instead we shall keep the racists separate, say the anti-racist. The state law says districts must develop mentoring programs and that they may include race-based stipends. I've also written at the end there as one of the quotes, because, well, it is law as well. That's the messed up thing here. Apparently state law supports them. So they'll have to go to the federal law or presumably appeal to equality law within the state if the local parents or the other teachers who have now got a pay deduction actually want to fight that. And if we go to the last link here, just to end this off, which is Libs of TikTok also has all the speeches in case you want to go and listen to this absolute insanity. And the support being offered by segregated schools, which I really want to get just the audio clip of this segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Like, you know that speech? It's a very famous one of one of the governors arguing for segregation. And I'm just going to put it like...
Just overlay it over the so-called anti-racists.
I might join one of these meetings and just make it my ringtone. Just, leave the phone on the desk and be like, oh, sorry, another call. And just side with them the whole time. I don't know what to say. What a hellhole, but that's the future. If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to check out all the premium content we have on the site, such as this, which is from the live event we did, in which I gave the feminist immigration policy that will save the West. Let me know in the comments how sexist it is. Anyway, if you'd like to find out what else is coming out on the website, you can always go over to lotuseaters_com to follow us there. Thank you and goodbye.